Welcome to Developer Office Hours. My name is Charles Watkins, and I'm a developer advocate here at Stripe, and I am joined by Matt Ling.
Hey, how's it going? Yeah, my name is Matthew Ling. I'm another developer advocate at Stripe. Thanks for joining us and welcome to this live stream. And a special hello to the current cohort at Astrolabs who are also going to be joining us today. In this stream, we're going to take a look at some common pitfalls in payment systems and checkouts in general. And what you can do to actually avoid them. And we'll also do some a little bit of coding, and we'll also show off some ways that Stripe actually helps to avoid those pitfalls. So there's a team at Stripe, and they periodically run a large study and a survey of all of the largest e-commerce and online businesses in Europe. And I think one of the kind of headline, we're going to basically run through a few of the main areas that they found that there are issues and places where we can optimize. And one of the top line stats that really caught my eye was that if 94% of all of those European e-commerce businesses that were actually kind of studied, there was at least 5 basic errors in their checkout process. So that causes unnecessary friction for customers and will ultimately hurt conversion. So we hope to touch on a few of those today.
That's super cool. And this is really exciting because one of the things that I feel like a lot of people don't know is that somewhere between 60-70% of people, when they actually leave checkout, it's that last stage. So it's incredibly important to build out checkout experiences that not only you get people into the cart, they add things. You want to obviously ensure that when they get to the form, they feel safe, they feel comfortable. They know that you're handling their very sensitive data correctly, and that they actually convert. So I'm super excited to hear all the things you got prepared for us, Matt.
Yeah, sure. So maybe we can just talk give a quick overview of the kind of main key areas that we're gonna touch on a few things. Firstly, we're gonna look at form design and error handling. Secondly, mobile optimization. Thirdly, we'll look at some topics around localization. Fourth, saving payment methods for future use, right? So that's a really important topic. And then finally, we'll touch on a few trust and security issues. Maybe diving into the first category. So that's some pitfalls around form design and error messaging. The first pitfall is around poor card formatting. So poor card input formatting. So when users are actually inputting their cards on your checkout, it is important to actually make sure that the formatting is really well done. There's a couple of clear patterns here. For example, grouping numbers into groups of 4. On our card element here, or a payment element in this case. Then also showing the card brand in real time as the user actually enters their card is a really important thing to do, because that gives them confidence that they're actually getting their card number right as they go.
This is super cool. How are you doing that? So I'm looking at your screen right now, and I see it's just grouping it. Are you doing anything in particular to make that happen?
In this case, no, I haven't actually coded this up. This is the payment element, right? So this is the brand new element that we've just released, which lets you integrate a ton of different European payment methods, including Klarna, Ideal, Bancontact. Currently, it's just configured to take cards, and we're going to demonstrate how to provide other local payment methods later on in the stream. But you get this out of the box with the payment element. You also get it out of the box with the card element using Stripe.js. If you were going to do it yourself, you would have to. We would encourage you to actually build it, with the same optimization. So grouping card numbers together into logical groups of 4, and also doing things like revealing the card brand as it's detected in real time. So there are 2 optimizations which are really important for card inputs. The next thing that's important to take care of, especially with cards, but also generally with with payment methods, but cards especially, because you can have things like declines and authorizations and things like that, is like handling error messaging correctly and well. So for example, with card input fields, a really great thing to do is to actually validate them in real time on the client. So you can see here, I tried to pay, I didn't put any card number in, and Stripe, well, in this case, the payment element or your checkout should know, this card number is incomplete, and just feed that back to the user in real time, so that they can actually they know what the next step is, basically, to fix that error. So in this case, I'm going to put in good old 42424242. And we can see that, okay, that's valid, no problem, but I do need to actually enter an expiration date and a CVC. Yeah. So that's like, sorry, go ahead.
Oh, no, it's super cool. For anyone watching, I'm just curious, can anyone guess why the card number is just 4242 over and over again? I've asked that in previous streams and I haven't gotten an answer yet, but
oh wow, I'm going to learn that too.
Right?
I don't know the answer to that one.
Yeah, we'll see. It's like a really geeky reference, I think. But
okay.
Yeah, but continue.
So the second kind of class of errors, especially around cards, is handling when errors occur, because of the card, for example, being expired or having been declined. And in that case, we can actually provoke that error. I'm going to put in some usable test CVC. We can provoke that error with the special test card. So in this case, okay, I actually haven't logged anything out for that error, so we're going to do that very quickly. So for the developers that are on the stream at the moment, you might recognize some of this code. We're using the brand new Stripe payment element. We've got a client secret that we've returned from the backend here from creating a payment intent. And what we're going to do is we're going to use that client secret here to confirm the payment. In this case, if the result is an error, for example, a decline, which I tried to just provoke with that test card, I should log the error message. So in this case, depending on how you're integrating with a processor, if it's not Stripe, you would have to like catch that error and actually report it back to the user in a really useful, sensible way. So in this case, we try to process that card. The card would decline, and then we would need to say, your card was declined, please use a new card. So yeah, that's and there's a lot of test cards. We can actually provoke lots of different scenarios for that.
Super cool.
Yeah. So the third optimization that you can do, which helps with conversion, especially on mobile, but generally speaking, is to make sure that that address autocomplete and autofill, that you actually implement those on your checkout system and on your payment flow. And we're not going to implement one now, but I do have this site which I've been using recently in Ireland. So just to give a demonstration of what I mean by an address lookup. Let's see, Stripe Dublin. So this is using an API in the background. It's actually found the full address, even though I've just put Stripe Dublin. And then you would use basically this structured data to autofill address data on your checkout flow. I can actually show an example of that in the browser. If I jump into a checkout session. My browser has my address, as my contact, or rather, it's using my contact book to find my address, and that's just an autofill. So there's no lookup happening there, but that's a great experience, right? So if I don't want to actually enter my address every time, just use autofill, and that speeds up your checkout process a lot. And I think that's the thing. I think one of the interesting stats around speed of checkout, I think it was something like 1 in 5, so 20% of people will actually drop off your checkout. 25% rather will drop off a checkout if it takes longer than 1 minute. So you really need to optimize that, right, to be super fast and super efficient.
All right, so you can't just it's not just about having the payment form. If all of the different inputs need to be optimized, so that for speed, so that it's a smooth, frictionless experience.
Exactly. Totally. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. The more you can do, the better. But those three are like some of the top 3 optimizations you can do to make your checkout like really, really seamless.
Awesome.
Yeah. So maybe moving on to like a second topic. So mobile optimizations, obviously a really, really important topic in today's world. We all shop on our mobile phones. So I think the first anti-pattern or pitfall is not optimizing your checkout to be responsive. So we can show you an example. If I jump into, let's say, the dashboard, let's create a test product for 10 euros. It's a one-time product. And there's a really nice visualization we can use here for creating payment links. And we can see here, this is a desktop checkout that you would see if that payment link was actually accessed. And here we can see that this is the mobile optimized version. So it really is important to make sure that your checkout process is mobile optimized so that folks can check out on their smartphones, because like a lot of shopping is happening on mobile. A lot of purchases are happening on mobile, so it is important to make sure that it's your checkout is responsive. A second anti-pattern or a pitfall is not using digital wallets. Here we can see that Apple Pay will be enabled for this particular checkout. My Safari won't really show that if I actually were to go there, because I don't have a card set up on my wallet, but I can jump into, let's say, the payment element docs on Stripe. And here, this Google Pay option is showing up because I do have a valid card in my Google Pay wallet or saved in Chrome. So again, really, really important to allow folks to use digital wallets to check out in your payment flows.
That's a really good one. So that's also the payment element, and then in order to like get that integration, what do you have to do to get digital wallets on the payment element specifically?
I think that comes for free. I mean, if you basically, if you have a valid card in your wallet, whether it's using Apple Pay in Safari or Google Pay for Chrome, then you get that for free, I believe.
Awesome.
Yeah. And so, another really interesting stat there. So like 50% of from the study is 50% of e-commerce traffic is on smartphones, but cart abandonment happens at twice the rate on mobile than desktop. So obviously folks aren't optimizing for the mobile case, even though there's so much purchasing actually happening on mobile. So again, not having responsive design, make sure to enable for digital wallets like Apple Pay, Google Pay. And then finally, and we don't have an example of this, but for example, if you're inputting like a number into a card field, making sure to use the native number keypad instead of having to use the irregular keyboard to find the digits. That's another great optimization you can do just to make it easier for folks to input their data on your checkout form.
Oh, that's a good one. So like not ensuring that when people enter in their numbers, they don't see like the ABC, QWERTY keyboard and have to do the thing where they like shift and then change, like click numbers. Is
exactly.
That it? Oh yeah,
exactly.
That's super annoying.
Exactly. Yeah, that's always like pretty pleasing when you see that like the proper keypad actually reveals itself, and then you can put a number in really comfortably. So yeah, like that's an important thing, and I think that's a pretty simple thing to implement if you're coding up a front end. Yeah, there's some mobile optimization things. We've shown the payment element with Google Pay. Yeah, we could move on. I feel like we're really, that's probably my fault, racing through these topics. So please do like ask questions or stop as we go. Charles, what do you think? Should we move on?
Yeah, absolutely. I know that we've already covered mobile optimization. We've already covered form design. So I think the next one up is localization, which I'm sure is like something that probably affects developers in Europe, or developers that are like have products and services that are in Europe more so than like developers who might be in the US, since here it's all English in the USD. But
yeah,
Yeah, what's up with localization and why is it important?
Yeah, absolutely. So if you look at the payments landscape in Europe, like 40% of online payments in Europe are with debit cards and credit cards. So the other 60% is like everything else. So it really makes sense, and it's really important to offer the payment methods that folks are, they trust, they're used to, they feel comfortable using. And there's a ton of them in EMEA, right? So we've got things like Bank Contact, Ideal, Giropay, Przelewy 24, which is hard to learn to say, and I don't think my pronunciation was particularly good. P24. There's did I say Bank Contact? I probably did. SEPA and that whole swathe of payment methods. So it is important to, depending on your market that you're selling into, if it's Germany, you would probably want to make sure that you're using SEPA debit and Giropay, Ideal for the Netherlands, and so on and so forth. Otherwise, or the other topic or other important topic is making sure that your checkout is localized, right? So can the users read it in the languages that they're actually comfortable with? That's one thing that we can quickly demonstrate here too, that that payment element does pretty well and pretty elegantly. If I set the locale to be, let's take something really cool, like cool looking like Japanese, I should be able to decide that I want to have, my checkout or my payment flow in Japanese for my users in Japan that are checking out. So obviously that's a really, really important feature and a really important thing to do for your payment flow and your checkout process, and also for currency, right? So you want to make sure to charge your users in Japan in yen and the appropriate currencies in the countries that you're selling into, be it Germany or wherever in the EU. So let's see other. We touched upon not offering the right local payment methods. So we can also demonstrate, for example, if you wanted to sell to folks in Germany or in Netherlands, you might decide, well, I'm gonna use Ideal cards and Ideal if that's where your customers are based, or rather cards and Ideal if your customers are based in the Netherlands. So this is a really, really great thing to do to increase your conversion, because folks in the Netherlands love Ideal. And they I know that Paul, our colleague in Amsterdam, showed me my first Ideal transaction when I was there a few weeks ago. And it's an important thing to do, to offer those payment methods, those localized payment methods to your customers. Let's see what. Oh yeah, last but not least, in Europe, folks are really really popular ways rather to pay for goods and services is to use buy now pay later payment methods. So for example, we could say for customers in Sweden, I think it's a popular payment method in Sweden, we can also offer Klarna.
Whoa, hold on just a second here. So you are able to add your payment methods. So you're adding your payment methods right now.
Yeah.
You're adding your payment methods like Klarna. You just added Klarna. You had Ideal, I think, a moment ago. And
That's
you're using
true.
the payment element. And you just need to go in and just like kind of change the payment method types.
That's the beauty of the payment element, right? So you literally just need to describe in this payment method types array. For example, if we ask for, let's say we decide we're switching to Germany, we're going to sell into that market, we can just say, hey, just enable Giropay and you're good to go. And so I can just like jump into, well, this is obviously a test flow where I can either authorize or fail that Giropay. But actually Klarna is a really interesting one, because their test system looks really, is a bit more interactive. So let's jump into that really quickly.
Yeah.
All right, Klarna. Yeah, so let's see. Jenny, add example. Jenny Rosen. And there's a bunch of test data on the stripe.com docs where you can provoke lots of different types of scenarios from in this so-called Klarna playground, and where you can simulate successful payments, failed payments and things like that. So it's a pretty great way to pay. And the interesting thing about Klarna, by the way, is that like if you are using Klarna, you as the merchant, you get paid in full upfront, and Klarna does all of the heavy lifting to arrange receiving funds from the customer, whether it be split into installments. So that's a really interesting payment method, I think, and offering that flexibility to your customers will therefore lead to increased conversions, right? So again, I lived in Berlin for a long time. Credit cards was just not a popular payment method. It was either debit cards or cash or bank transfer. So yeah, a lot of people just don't have or didn't either want to use them, and they just felt that using SEPA debit or something like that was much more trustworthy and useful payment method. So important to you to offer localized payment methods or local payment methods for your customers. Yeah.
Really interesting. So we got localization, and just to recap, so you can add. It's really important. Okay, so it sounds like it's really important to add those different payment methods, especially in regions where there are preferred payment methods other than cards, like in Germany and in the Netherlands and places like that. That's one
Exactly.
optimization. And
Yep.
then the other one you showed us, which was pretty cool, was ensuring that the forms are actually generated in the right language. And you can do all of that using the locale parameter for
That's absolutely, yeah. I can show that again. Let's say, do you have like an ISO? Do you know off the top of your head for that's not Japanese? Let's see.
that's a good
I would
one.
have to look. Let's see.
What's a language that we should show this one in?
Well, we can do German, right? I mean, at least I should be able to read that after 17 years there. Yeah. So the payment element will automatically localize into that language. So that is obviously really important to be able to like target your customers in different European countries.
Okay, incredible. And then I think the next one was saving payment methods for future use, right? Like that's something that you kind of expect for a payment form, but apparently a lot of sites don't
Yeah.
allow you to do it.
Yeah, so I think the result of the study turned up that actually of all of the sites surveyed or kind of researched, pretty much like up to 75% of them didn't offer a way to save your payment method for using later. So that adds to the toil for the customer, because ultimately when they come back to to your site, they'll have to put their payment method back in. Or rather input it again. And I suppose like it would decrease trust a little bit in the sense like, well, what did they do with it last time? Right.
Yeah.
So saving payments methods for future use is a pretty important topic. We can also demo that here.
Let's
say for the sake of argument, let me roll back. I'm just going to roll back to cards on our payment element.
Okay.
What I'll do is I'll create a customer. Is in order to save a payment method, we're going to need a customer. Okay, let's give them a name. All right. So we're going to pass that customer when creating the payment intent. Charles, you'll stop me if I've got any typos.
I'll do my best. Yeah.
Okay, and we're gonna ask, we're gonna tell this payment element that we want to set up future usage to be off session. So what that means is that what's going to happen is that when when the customer enters their card, that card is going to be tokenized, securely tokenized, right? So that like relieving you of the burden of all that PCI compliance. It'll be tokenized, saved as a payment method, and it will be attached to that user. But it will also be so-called set up for off-session usage. So, for example, let's say you have a scenario where you want to charge the user for a certain amount of money up front, and then you might charge them a small amount, like a tip or a service fee off session. When they're not off session, means they're not in the browser on a session. That's how you would achieve this. And so I think we can try this out if I haven't got any typos, and see what happens. And I'm going to use this Amex card so that we can kind of clearly see in the dashboard that that card was set up for future usage. Okay, so that's actually worked. We've been redirected back. Let's see what happens to the customer. Oh, it's going to be like the second last customer, I think, here. Yeah.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, exactly. So what's happened here is that we've charged, the payment intent was for 20 euros. That charge has succeeded. But we also have this reusable payment method, which is always with the PM_ID. And here we can see that this payment method, this Amex card, was set up for future usage. If we look at the actual payment intent, it'll also tell us that it was successfully set up for future off-session payments. So what we could do is we could take that ID, PM_, which is the payment method. We could create a payment intent for that, charge it immediately, and we're good to go. So that's sorry, go ahead.
No, I was like, that seems super useful. So if the customer comes back to the site, they don't need to enter in the same details anymore. They can just, I don't know, you could like surface the payment methods that are already attached to that customer.
Absolutely.
Click on it and then just do the payment that way.
Absolutely, yeah. So like some folks have like multiple cards, so you would create a different payment method for each one of their cards. They could come back and then you could, for example, show them, their card brand and which one would they like to pay with and things like that. So yeah, that's absolutely doable for sure. In that case, it would be an on-session future usage of that payment method, but that's absolutely fine.
Makes sense. If you set it up for future usage off session, you can still use it. Can you still use it for on session?
I think you can.
Yeah,
I think you can. It's just that for off session, it's more likely that you're going to actually need to authorize that initial setup, and we can actually simulate that by using this card here. So, for example, if a card is being set up for future usage, you want to make sure that it's not going to be asked for 3DS authentication every time. So, for example, you would let's see, yeah, you would authorize the setup of that card, and then in the back end, or rather, like in the background, what's happening is that payment method is being validated and authorized for offline off-session usage. That being said, there is the caveat that it's up to the issuer as to when they re-ask for authorization. So your payment flow should always really be designed to be able to get a user back on session should a payment require authorization in the future.
All right.
Yeah.
Awesome.
And it's worth mentioning that like checkout payment element is able to set up for you can set up for future usage with any payment intent, but certainly you can do that with payment element. Checkout supports that too, and it's not only for cards. For example, you can set up for future use for like SEPA debits and all of that kind of thing too.
Super cool.
Yeah.
What's next up for us?
What's next up? I think another example of saving payment method for future users that we can show, which is a really nice, useful. This is not something that you would implement yourself, but certainly it's worth pointing out that we have here this link with Stripe option. This means that like when you put your input your payment method, you can authenticate yourself using your email address and your phone number. And then that payment method is then available across all of the merchants who have opted in for Link with Stripe. So for example, Charles, let's say you're selling cameras, and I've just shopped here, and I've decided, yeah, absolutely save my my card for one-click checkout, and you've opted in for the same Link with Stripe system. Then I could go purchase cameras on your website with just one click. And away we go.
It's pretty useful. And if you have the Link with Stripe set up, you can just you can just check out with that. You don't have to enter in really much payment information at all. It's like,
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it will all be surfaced for you. So it's literally one click to check out. Yeah, absolutely.
okay.
Yeah, so that's really, really useful. Let's see what else we have. So I think the last category for optimizations, it's things like we talk about buyer trust and security. So for example, not having a really consistent design that looks secure. I think the interesting stat there is that 11% of those surveyed said that they would drop off a checkout if it just didn't feel secure, which is of course pretty subjective, but nevertheless 1 in 10 is a pretty high number. So it's important to have like the integration with your brand and pretty well designed. So secondly, not allowing guest checkouts. I think that's another important optimization. So if folks just don't want to share or they want to minimize the amount of data that they're sharing with the merchant, then it is important to allow guest checkouts. Let's see what else. Another one, an order summary. So making sure to show an order summary where the customer can actually change quantities. They can decide to delete something out of their cart. A lot of it turns out that's quite a common pitfall, that folks don't actually create an order summary, and then the user just they don't have that option to like change their order at that point during the checkout.
Mm-hmm.
And then I think we've already shown it, but maybe one more time. I think handling the 3D, especially in Europe, handling the 3DS challenge modal or redirect gracefully is a really, really important thing to do. Of course, in a way, having to actually pass the 3DS challenge is a point of friction, but nevertheless, handling it well increases trust, because the user then knows, okay, I've authorized this payment, so therefore, that's going to increase their feeling of trust as they use a checkout. So they're kind of the top optimizations for things around buyer trust and security. So they're like the 5 main categories. Have we had any questions whatsoever so far?
I don't think we've had any questions yet, but we definitely had a few people join the stream. So let's do like a quick recap, since we've like gone through these 5 big like pitfalls that you see a lot in checkouts. So
sure.
I'll hand it back to you to just kind of go through them.
Yeah. Okay. So basically, we touched upon 5 areas where it's really important to optimize for. Making sure that your form design is on point, especially for card input fields. Doing things like grouping the numbers together, surfacing card brands in real time, surfacing invalid card numbers and invalid expiration dates. So that's all really, really important for optimizing or for increasing conversion. Making sure to handle errors correctly. Make sure that the user knows what the next error, or rather what error has occurred and what their next step is, so they just don't feel blocked while they're checking out. Second kind of big area of optimization, or second, like an area of optimization would be mobile optimization. So making sure that let's see, we can even show how the payment element is automatically optimized, if you like, for both desktop and mobile. So this element will drop into your site, or it can be used in a mobile context as well. So making sure that your site is working really, really perfectly on mobile, really, really important.
Sorry. While you're doing a recap, we did just get a question.
Okay, go for it.
So we got a question from Sitham. I hope I pronounced that correctly. Let me know if I didn't. What can we do to decrease the number of abandoned carts?
Yeah, so I think there's quite a number of things. So folks will abandon a cart if it just takes too long to check out, right? So I think the stat was 1 in 5 will drop off if it takes longer than a minute, which is like really, really fast. Otherwise, things like making sure that like they can actually efficiently check on mobile. I think the stat there was that there's so much so much purchasing happens on smartphones. Like 50% of all like traffic is coming from smartphones, but the drop off rate is like twice as high on mobile than it is on desktop. So making sure that your site is like really highly optimized for mobile means that they're not, well, you've got a higher chance that they're not going to abandon their cart. So and then thirdly, I would say probably offering localized payment methods. So if you're, if you're a customer in Europe and you don't see that, if you're in the Netherlands and your site doesn't offer ideal, I'm just going to drop off. So I think there are three really important things to do to make sure folks don't abandon.
Yeah, and it's not the same thing as recovering from an abandoned cart. It's not the same thing as decreasing the number of abandoned carts. But another thing that you can do is recover from abandoned carts. And I know with checkout, there's actually some functionality that allows you to get a webhook when someone goes to like a checkout session and then they abandon it, so that you can try and send them, say, kick off an email message to that user so they can return to the site and then complete the payment, since that can oftentimes lead to a conversion. And I'll just drop the link in the chat for that one.
Yeah, that's super cool. Yeah, that's a pretty recent addition to checkout. And yeah, that is super powerful, because like some folks, they'll drop off a checkout, and it's not because maybe it wasn't optimized necessarily. It's just they're kind of like, well, I'm just not going to hit pay right now, and then they just go and make some coffee or something like that. So, and then maybe forget about checking out altogether. And we did see that a lot on support engineering, where folks be like, oh, why did that checkout session, why was it created? But like, no, they just didn't finish it. A lot of people just like stop and go, they think about their purchases and stuff like that. So being able to like make use of that webhook and actually ping back and say, oh, hey, would you like to actually check out? I think is a really great way to increase conversion.
Absolutely. Any more questions? Like we've got some time here to just chat more about different optimizations that you can make. Otherwise, we can get back to like kind of the recap, because I think, Matt, you covered form design. We were talking about mobile optimization.
Yeah.
I'll leave it to you for I think the other three. I kind of interrupted you there with a question, but
yeah, no worries. And yeah, like the third main area, localization. So make sure that you're translating your payment flow into the languages that your users speak. So that can be done. Well, I mean, checkout will do that automatically if you by using the browser's locale, but you can also force a specific language. If you happen to know that your customers are in a certain country, you can automatically translate into a certain language, and make sure to use the currencies that they're used to. So, for example, USD in the States, euros in Europe, etc., etc. Offering localized payment methods, like, so important, right? So ideal in the Netherlands, and Europay in Germany, and SEPA debit, because again, only 40% of of online payments in Europe are either credit or debit cards. So that means that the other 60%, they're really it really means that you have to cater to their wishes in terms of what kind of payment methods that they'd like to use. And that's where payment element again can really come in handy, because let's take a payment method that we didn't. Let's say I think it's a P24 supported. Let's see.
Yeah.
It's only 3 characters to find out. And did I break it? Maybe I did.
Yeah. Let's we also got one more question.
Sure.
We can hop back into adding new payment methods in a moment, but we have one more question. So Vincent says it can take too much height on mobile, so the user has to scroll more. Having the option to change the display would be nice. And I'm assuming that's related to, and Vincent, you can let us know, is that related to like the payment element, or is that just kind of like a question around mobile optimization generally? But definitely there are things that you can do to control, at the very least, the way that the payment element renders on mobile. Based on just like which element you're mounting it to, right?
Yeah, I think that's a good question. And I think especially with the payment element actually has a whole appearance API which you can leverage to like to style it. I think probably another thing to be aware of is, and you're right, if you've got a lot of form elements on a small screen, let's jump into checkout. I think that's why autofilling is just so important, because as the user scrolls, they just only want to click once to get all of their form elements filled out, scroll on and keep going. And here, for example, is another really important optimization, right? So again, this if this form was not or did not offer the option to say that my billing address is the same as shipping, I would have to go along and God forbid that autofill also wasn't implemented here. I'd have to type in my address again. So there are, like, again, two ways to the form might be high, but two ways to optimize data input on the mobile case.
Yeah. And in addition to that, here's another comment from Vincent, just like clarifying a bit, payment element. So like, how could you have it with like one line with just the card number? So with that one, I would say there is with the payment element, and I'll just grab the docs here. There is an option that you can, let's see. My question is let me just add this here. So my question is how to have the card data input with one line, just card number, expiration date, and CVC, all of this on one line. That's a good question. To be frank, I don't have the answer to that one offhand. I believe it's possible, but maybe that's like a dev bite that we create in the future. And we'll reference you on that one, Vincent, when we get that one, get that one figured out.
That's a good question. And like, there is always a fallback. If you want to have that amount of granularity, you can have, you could use the regular card, card element, which will give you those like an inline card input field if that's what you need.
Yeah. That sounds like a good dev bite. We also have just like one other question. So it's a pretty interesting one, not necessarily on payment optimizations per se, but just like, are there any tutorials that students can use to make projects? And I would say that, like, this, again, not specifically to payment optimization per se. That is interesting and something that maybe we can explore later, Matt. I would say that, like, learning how to build forms is like a great way to learn about mobile development, because about development generally, web development, because it involves the front end, the back end, oftentimes, and can involve a database depending on what you're doing. So
yeah, for sure. One thing I can recommend, depending on your experience level, is like, we have a whole series called GPS, which is the Global Payment Series, hosted on YouTube under the Stripe Developers channel. And that goes into some detail about how to create a simple form, mount a card element there, and some JavaScript to take care of actually confirming the payment. And they are, they're relatively simple depending on your experience level. So, that'd be a great way to probably get started with a baseline of implementing a payment system.
Absolutely. Cool. So sorry, I threw some questions at you there, Matt.
No
you
worries.
were talking about
That's what we're here for.
Yeah.
So localization. So one of my favorite topics, honestly. It's making sure that that you offer the right payment methods to your customers in different countries. And then we touched upon, so for the fourth topic was saving payment methods for reuse. So for example, so making sure that when your customers return to your site, they don't need to input their payment method again. You've saved it before. You can either save it for sorry, I look like I'm distracted as I'm using so many screens. You can use that payment method again while the user is on session, or you can actually save it for off session usage if you're going to charge that user at some point in the future while they're not on your site. And that's absolutely possible, again, using the payment element, checkout, payment intents, etc. And then we touched upon some trust and security topics. So making sure that your design is consistent. So, for example, one thing that always stands out to me when on certain checkout sites where I'm asked to input my card number, the formatting of the card elements look completely different to the rest of the site. and look very inconsistent. And even though, you know, I trust that organization, it still looks a bit odd, and it kind of chips away a little bit on my feeling of trust around using that input field for a payment. What else do we have? Oh yeah, and then again, doing things like making sure that a comprehensive order summary is displayed at the end of your checkout, where the user can check their quantities, decide to remove things from their order, and that just builds a lot of trust. And I can also like give some extra credit tips on subscriptions, Charles, if we have time.
Yeah,
Just a
absolutely.
couple, yeah.
I think we have about 2 minutes. Yeah.
All right, cool. Yeah. So not that there's anything specific to demonstrate, but if you're running a subscription service, there are some things that you can do to increase conversion and help customers to, let's say, yeah, really convert customers ultimately to being like recurring paying customers. And the first thing is to offer a trial period, right? So some of these things might seem like no brainers and stuff you would, you know, things you would do if you're running like a SaaS business or a subscription service. But like these things are really important, because if a user, you know, gets to use a trial of your service and, you know, they fall in love with that, that's even better. So offering a trial period is a really important thing to do if you can, for your subscription service. Secondly, allowing coupons, right? So if you can offer a discount to a user and they can input a coupon on your site to actually to apply that discount, that's another really great thing to convert a user into a paying customer. And then finally, again, my favorite subject, making sure to have the right payment method. So for example, in England, Bax debit is a very, very popular payment method for recurring payments. And in Europe, SEPA debit, also a very, very popular recurring payment method for off-session payments and recurring off-session payments. So again, offering the right payment methods for your subscription service. So yeah, so some extra credit things there for subscription services. So yeah, I think they're kind of, you know, there's a lot you can do as well. I mean, there's a lot more you can do. You can do things like A/B testing and checking different types of designs for your checkouts. But those 5 and a few extra for subscription, 5 areas are the ones that we would definitely recommend optimizing for.
Awesome. So I think we're kind of at the end of our time here, but we had one last question, and this one I think, Matt, you might know a bit more about me here. This is on Stripe tax.
Yeah.
So would Stripe handle tax in a different
Yeah.
country like the US? Is it in production now?
I'm super pleased to say, absolutely, yeah. Stripe tax is available. So and it's available in a lot of countries, like all EU countries, I believe. US. I don't know the full list off the top of my head. I think Australia, but in fact, we can post a video with the one of the head of the product development, Kelly Moriarty, on getting started with Stripe tax. And it literally is like set up 3 things in your dashboard. And then when you're creating your checkout session, for example, you would say automatic tax calculation true, and you're done. And we automatically calculate tax for the specific type of product that you're selling. And apply it, and yeah, it's I'm really pleased to say that that's all launched and in production. Did you grab that? Can you grab that link, Charles, or should I try and find it?
Yeah, I have the link, but I'm kind of running into some technical issues where I cannot
Let me see if I
things in the chat any longer. I get an error every time. So
oh, funny. Okay, let me see if I can just grab it real quick.
Yeah.
All right, let's see. Stripe developers.
But I can post it up here, and we'll make sure that we have this in the description. But
yeah, we'll link that up in the description as soon as the stream's over. But yeah, Stripe tax is definitely launched and available.
Awesome. Do we have any more questions for developer office hours? I know we had a theme here, but it is office hours, so to speak. So if you have any questions, let us know. Otherwise, we'll give it a few seconds and we'll end the stream. I mean, thank you so much, Matt, for like breaking down all of these different common pitfalls and like anti patterns to form design and just having like doing checkouts just generally. It was super cool and super interesting.
Yeah, my pleasure. Yeah, and yeah, another shout out to Astrolabs, and we're so pleased that you joined us. And maybe we could like plug a few of our resources that folks can actually sign up to. So we have a Developer Digest newsletter. You can sign up to that. It goes out once a month. I will post the links in the show descriptions as soon as this finishes. Also, please follow us on Stripe Dev on Twitter, where we tweet a lot about all of the new features, and you can engage with us there. Our Twitter handles are displayed here, so either engage with us on Twitter at Stripe Dev, Stripe Developers YouTube channel as well, and then subscribe to the newsletter. And also, there's a Discord, relatively brand new Discord server where you can just come and talk to us about payments and talk to us about integrations. And just generally hang out and talk payments. So yeah, we'd invite you to definitely engage.
Yeah, totally. Thanks so much, everyone, for joining us for this developer office hours. It was really cool. Showing some different ways to optimize payment forms, learning from Matt, seeing some new functionality from the payment element and checkouts. We really look forward to having another developer office hours in December. Thanks again, and have a wonderful day wherever y'all are.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you. Bye, everyone.